Hey everybody, welcome back to Movies in a Bottle, where we're breaking down 9. Normally I'd try to sell you on how this is like a dark animated adventure or something like that, but honestly this is my 9th breakdown and I love this movie. Let's roll film. An old man, only known as the Scientist, is meticulously crafting a sophisticated ragdoll called a Stitchpunk. Sounds of war echo throughout his mind while he narrates that humanity had such potential, but it was squandered in the blind pursuit of technology. The world is ending, but life must go on. As the old man finishes his creation, he places some sort of device in a socket and it activates with a mysterious green glow that swirls around to form the title card. 9. Quick note, I know they're genderless dolls, but for my sake I'm going to use the same pronouns of the voice actors. The tiny mouse-sized Stitchpunk was left dangling, and after a while the rope snapped and he awakened once he hit the floor. When he stands, a giant 9 across his back is revealed and he notices the device laying next to him, so he stashes it in his pocket for now. Apparently a good deal of time has gone by because 9 sees the Scientist, now long since passed, on the floor. 9 clambers his way over to a rickety window, and when he looks out across the barren city, he sees nothing but the aftermath of devastation and ruin. But what's this? He sees another Stitchpunk dragging something in the streets below, but when 9 tries to cry out for him, he finds that he has no voice. Now in the streets, he takes in more details of the world that once was, and he studies propaganda covering the walls with flyers carrying instructions to revolt. Suddenly, a bright light is bearing down on 9, and it's not long till he has to defend himself against something approaching. But it's just the other Stitchpunk, and he's named 2, and he says that he's a friend. This movie's based on an Oscar-nominated short by director Shane Acker, more on that at the end, but there's no word spoken for roughly the first 5 minutes to pay homage to the 11-minute short. 2 observes the superior craftsmanship for 9, like the carved wood and molded copper, but he also realizes that 9 can't speak. 2 has a solution. They rummage through his cart full of junk, and without knowing any better, 9 almost smashes a live round of ammo until 2 warns him that some things in this world are better off where they lie. Then 2 pulls something out of a doll and fixes 9's voice after a little bit of tinkering. 2 notices something under 9's new voice component, and he's ecstatic when 9 shows him the device. 2 starts to tell him that someone is always drawing this, but they're interrupted by dangerous sounds closing in. 2 makes 9 hide in a can nearby, and just moments later a terrifying cat beast is attacking 2. It swats him aside, collects the device, and nearly gets 9 as well, until 2 hits the beast with a rock, sacrificing himself for 9. 9 helplessly watches it carry 2 across an empty field towards a towering factory in the distance. 9 tries to go after his new friend, but he collapses after just a few steps. As it turns out, yet another Stitchpunk was watching 9 through a telescope, and he brings him back to his hideout. As 9 wakes up, a pair of scissors are thrust in his face, but it was just that other Stitchpunk named 5, and he was only fixing 9's torn arm. 5 is shocked to have found another Stitchpunk after so long, and when he mentions his missing friend 2, 9 says that he knows where he is and they should go after him. But it won't be that easy. Another Stitchpunk, 1, barges in wearing a crown and wielding a staff and forbids their journey because it's against their rules. To enforce those rules, the towering 8 follows behind 1 while brandishing a giant sword made from a chef's knife. Imagine Sackboy fused with Pyramid Head. 8 escorts everyone to the top of their hideout, and it turns out to be the beautiful, melancholic ruins of the Notre Dame, with the clock stuck at 9:09 by the way. 1 explains how when the rest of them woke up, it was total chaos amidst an active war zone between man and machines. The machines were vastly superior and deployed a toxic gas that ended all life, not just humanity, but all of it. In the flashback, 2 and 7 were brave and heroic, but the cowardly 1 still takes credit for bringing them all to their sanctuary. 1 says that after a while the world fell silent except for the only other thing that remains, the beast that 9 and 2 encountered earlier. 9 wants to know where it came from, why does it hunt them, but 1 has no interest in exploring such things and only wants to stay away from danger. 1 declares 2 is lost and crosses his name off a list, joining 3, 4, and 7. 9 wants to go after 2, but 1 just sends 9 and 5 away to man the watchtower while he sits on a makeshift throne. There was a Facebook ARG that had about 70 posts which outlined lore for the movie. Between that, the making of, and tiny details, we know this universe takes place in an alternate timeline where things went different around World War I. The director Shane Acker describes the world as if the Industrial Revolution got to continue on for another 100 years, and the only reason why our dolls survived all of it is because they could withstand the gases that the machines used. At the watchtower, 9 recognizes the factory in the distance, and he's re-inspired to save 2. 5 is hesitant because of the fear 1 has instilled in him with his rules, but 9 asks a critical question. Wouldn't 2 have come after you? 5 thinks about how 2 saved him after he lost his eye, and then he grabs his map to join 9. They backtrack to where the beast took 2, and they reclaim his gear before journeying onward. They seem to be lost on the outskirts of a sandstorm when they lose their map looking for a tunnel. 5 wants to turn back, but 9 notices their tunnel nearby along with the beast's tracks. 9 does a little bit of tinkering with their junk to assemble a working light, and they slowly walk inside the tunnel. but it turns out another small figure is following their tracks too. At the factory, it feels like the total antithesis of the Notre Dame. Where it's clinging on to whatever elegance it has left, the factory looms with a total dominating presence. They sneak their way into the bowels of the factory and find two locked in a cage on top of more rubble. But they aren't alone. The beast is nearby and it attacks. Two's cage is broken open in the struggle and their weapons are useless. They're all goners for sure. Until the mysterious follower shows up and ropes the beast's mouth shut and slices its head off. 2 and 5 recognize their savior as 7, and the 3 brave Stitchpunks are thrilled to be reunited. Sadly, it's short-lived because 9 sees the device and places it in the socket the beast was clawing at. 2 tries to stop 9, but he's too late. Green energy erupts from the device, and it strikes 2 after he shoves 9 to safety. Not only did he reawaken this new monster called the Fabricator, but he also restarted the entire factory. The Fabricator wakes up and starts to hunt the heroes just like the beast did. 9 and 5 are once again saved by 7 after she makes a distraction, allowing them to barely flee with their lives. Outside, 5 and 7 can't believe what 9 has done, but they have to keep moving because they hear the Fabricator as it builds its next hunter. They don't know what it wants, but 7 knows where to find answers, and she takes them to a dilapidated library. There, 9 studies a painting of the old world and wonders if this is what things were like, but no time for that. 7 calls for them and reveals that the twins 3 and 4 have been hiding here the whole time, looking for answers. While they can't speak, their eyes flicker to catalog everything. 9 confesses that he woke something terrible up, and he recognizes it from their history scrapbook. The twins take them up to see more info on the machine and the scientist, and they project an old film. The film chronicles a sinister chancellor harnessing a revolutionary machine that became the Fabricator. Initially created as a means for the government to rule with a robot army, the machines do what they always do and turn on humanity. Delving further, 9 asks about the device, and after drawing it out, the twins don't recognize it. But 5 does. It's what 6 is always drawing back at the Notre Dame. 9 needs to talk with 6, but just the idea of living under one's oppressive rules is enough to cause 7 to go on her own way again. Back at the church, 5 stealthily shows 9 drawings, and sure enough, it's the device. But 8 was there all along, and he takes them back to 1. They update the others on what they woke up, but they're interrupted when 6 finally comes out of hiding to reveal more drawings of the device and to give puzzling instructions to go back to the source. Now that we've seen all the characters, Elijah Wood voiced 9, and he points out in the making of that as the numbers get higher and higher, the creator had more finesse and kept improving the designs. Things come to a head when 1 sends 8 after our heroes. 9 stands his ground against 8 and calls 1 a coward. 1 then calls 8 a fool guided by pointless queries, and 9 counters by saying 1 is a blind man guided by fear. Then a winged beast smashes through the window, looking even deadlier than the cat beast. It breaks their makeshift elevator and separates 9 from the others below. As they're running away, 8 is able to hurt the monster with a well-thrown blade, but he's nearly knocked off the roof in the exchange. Now the monster's target, it swoops back to take aim at 8 with a rope spear, but 9 saves him by reflecting light into its eyes. Its relentless pursuit continues until 7 shows up, almost ending the battle again, but she's outmatched this time as the winged beast spears her leg. They cut the rope and it tangles into a crashed plane propeller and just about takes 1 with him, but 9 convinces him to lose his precious cape instead of his life. They survive the attack but lost their sanctuary. A hot air drone reports back to the factory and informs the Fabricator of their recent failure. Visibly frustrated, it studies 2's body and thinks up a new design. They have regrouped back at the library, and the twins have found something that could help. They trace 9's drawings of the device, now known to be a talisman, to an old book depicting a ritual, and it also matches what 6 is drawing too. 1 joins the rest to tell them once again to leave things alone, and inadvertently confirms 9's suspicions that he sent 2 out alone hoping he would die. The revelation almost causes 7 to end 1 right there, but 9 snaps her out of her rage and she runs off to be alone yet again. 9 finally understands what 6 has been repeating. They have to go back to the source, the room where 9 first woke up. 8 is enjoying some recreational electromagnetism when he hears something nearby. He checks it out and sees 2, but something is horribly wrong as he ascends with his eyes flickering hypnotically. Muttering under his breath, 1 finds himself alone in the vast library when he also hears something and sees 2. Like 8 before him, 1 is stunned by the bright lights as a huge serpent-like creature called the Seamstress emerges from the shadows with 2's body attached to its tail. 9 and 5 arrive to see 8 cocooned inside the monster, and 1 is about to join him. Of course, the hypnotic lights are deployed, but 9 is able to look away, while 5 is not. He's nearly captured too. Shane designed the creatures to be like monsters from classic mythology. The winged beast was a dragon, the seamstress was a siren, and the fabricator was like a cyclops. He said the connecting tissue between all the characters, whether good or bad, was they're all rising up from what was left behind. But 7 throws her blade, pinning 2's body to the wall before she severs its tail completely. Don't forget to carve that later. She tries to do her signature leaping strike, but she's intercepted mid-air. The seamstress tries to cut 7 down, but this time it's 5 that saves her with an impressive crossbow shot to the eye. With 7 still in its clutches and 8 in its stomach, the seamstress manages to slither away. 1 comes to, and no surprise, he orders everyone to find a new place to hide. But as 9 looks at 2's body, he says that he's done hiding. The remaining Stitchpunks have a funerary send-off for 2 on the water, complete with 1's precious coin over his eyes to keep with traditions found in the Greco-Roman mythologies of old. With no more time to waste, 9 goes on his own to rescue 7, leaving 5 in charge of the others with 1 instruction: if he doesn't come back, destroy the fabricator. With the light staff as his only weapon, 9 infiltrates the factory and watches in horror as 8 suffers the same tragic fate that befell 2. He can't allow that to happen to 7, so before she's offered up, he thinks fast and sets a trap for the monster. Thanks to 5 shot earlier, it can't discern a trap that 9 set by looping a rope through the nearby machinery and tying the other end to his light disguised as a fake Stitchpunk. He manages to cut 7 out in the nick of time before the seamstress is dragged through the machinery. Meanwhile, the others have followed 5's lead and placed a trap of their own. An oil barrel is positioned to be rolled down into a tunnel and into the factory, but they're waiting on 9's signal. 1 is getting impatient, and rightfully so. Another hot air drone spots them and sounds the alarm. Now on alert, the fabricator sees 9 and 7 escaping through the tunnels and sends a swarm of robots after them. 5 keeps 1 from lighting the oil drum just long enough for 9's signal, and they narrowly dodge the barrel and escape the tunnel. The flaming drum careens into the factory and sets off a cascading chain of explosions, destroying the entire lair. The Stitchpunks celebrate their very well-earned victory by playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow on a record player and enjoying their safety at last. Happy ending, right? Well, not quite. 5 chases a record he accidentally rolled down the hill and spots the all-too-familiar and unrelenting red eye of the fabricator approaching through the clouds of dust. 5 warns the others, but he isn't able to outrun the untethered fabricator, now resigned to drag itself around with its arms. Being the expert in self-preservation, they fall back on 1's lead to run across the bridge. His idea turns out to be a good one because it collapses under the weight, trapping the massive machine, but not before it swipes 6 on its way down like a Balrog. In his last moments, 6 says that the lost ones can be saved, and he reminds them of their main quest, saying to go back to the first room, he'll show you. The others think they need to use this chance to end the machine, but 9 has faith in 6 and splits off again to go to the source. He travels to the first room and searches until he finds a projector box where he learns not only of his origin, but the origin of all the Stitchpunks and their fated enemy, the Fabricator. Through the projector box, the scientist elaborates more on what 1 and the twins have explained already, confessing that he created what later became the revolutionary machine and it was born directly from his own mind. But moments after coming online, the Chancellor separated the creation from its creator and repurposed it for his own tyrannical machinations. With a heavy voice, he goes on to tell 9 that they're all that's left of humanity, the pieces of his soul, and that with the talisman, he will protect the future. The scientist carefully demonstrates how to activate the talisman, and with his final act, he transfers what's left of his soul to 9 and falls where he remains, even now. In what must be a profound out-of-body experience, 9 pays respect to the scientist before rejoining the fight. Following the explosive sounds of battle, he sees the other Stitchpunks working together to launch mortars at the Fabricator. He tells them all he learned in the first room, and the twins hold their fire so they don't destroy the talisman, but 1 doesn't care and he fires anyways. But it's not enough. They manage to run into a tunnel where 9 tells the others of his plan. He means to sacrifice himself to give them a chance to remove the talisman, and he shows them how to activate it once he's gone. Right after showing them the sequence, the machine forces them from the tunnel by using a flamethrower to explode all the live munitions inside. Not willing to lose anyone else, 9 prepares for his part of the plan, and the Fabricator starts to glow green. Then, living up to his name and his creed, 1 softly whispers to himself that 1 must be sacrificed. True to his word, he sacrifices himself for 9, but it buys him enough time to remove the talisman and perform the activation sequence. When he does, energy erupts and he points it right at the Fabricator's mechanical eye, finally destroying it once and for all. 7 finds 9 in the wreckage and hugs him, saying that he did it, but 9 knows there's something left to do. The remaining Stitchpunks assemble graves in a circle for their fallen friends, and 9 activates the talisman again. Then, for the first time, all 9 parts of the scientist's soul are reunited once more. The spirits ascend to the heavens above, and rain begins to fall, suggesting the Stitchpunks may have returned life to what is now their world. Director Shane Acker spent 4 years making the original short as his college thesis. Then it went on to be nominated for an Oscar. Then he was given the chance to expand it into a full movie, and he imagined himself as the scientist character. He said sometimes he was the crazy artist like 6, but sometimes he wanted to be fiercely independent like 7. Let's close out. What do you guys think would have happened if the Fabricator won? I think it would have been a Pyrrhic victory, like I have no mouth and I must scream, where sure the machine could have achieved its vengeful, misunderstood programming, but then the last of humanity would have been locked inside as a stalemate. But it's a good thing 9 won, huh? But that's a wrap. That's all I have for you on this one. I'll catch you next week for another breakdown.